I'm Meredith Wellington, and I served 8 years on the Montgomery County Planning Board that determines all the zoning. And my question is, why can't you make this use conditional in all parts of the county?
Okay, so the conditional use would, part of the issue is that it's the conditional use would require that there is a zoning hearing for every one of these. And so, all right, so part of it is a concern is that it would be very difficult. We have a hard time right now. We have streamlined that process so that when you have a new antenna, to make the 150-day shot clock. In the past 2 years since we updated the zoning code, we've had 2 applications come in that manner. It would be very difficult for us to be able to manage that process where we would have 100 of these potentially pending and have a zoning hearing for each of them. In addition, what the zoning hearing is designed to do is to determine if something is compatible with the community. So by setting up certain parameters and saying, if it's only 5 or 10 feet taller than something that is existing, if it's placed within 2 feet of something that's already there, if it's attached to a building, the assumption is that it is compatible with community use. And that allows us to process those applications more quickly, and that reserves more time for the ones that are more difficult for us to do.
Well, that's
Excuse me, Meredith, could I say one other thing? I think a lot of people are making the mistake that if it goes through a conditional use, that it will be turned down. And that isn't necessarily correct. Also, what we're afraid of, and last comment on this, is that if the shot clock runs, then it is allowed by right, and that's a problem. So therefore, we're trying to thread this needle by trying to just find a way that we can make these more compatible with the neighborhoods and not proliferation, and that I think that's what we're trying to do. And because the conditional use could allow these towers to go in just by right.
Just because you don't have the resources to hold the hearings, right? But the reason they could go by right is you would miss the time deadline, and you wouldn't be able to hold the hearing in time.
Certain things for antennas in which there's an antenna that's there now and you want to swap it out, Congress mandated that we may not deny those. And the FCC took that to say, well, swapping something out, and they made it much larger because they were really thinking of much taller antennas. The thing that actually concerns me is if you look at the federal government and the various budget and the things, these are the kinds of situations where you tend to have these must-pass bills and things get attached. And that piece of we must approve all of these antenna modifications was attached to the Middle Class Tax Relief Act that had to get passed. So part of this is, and that's why I put out there is this other legislation, is that one of the things that we really are trying to address is if it takes 150 days for all of these things, it creates more friction at the FCC and the BDAC. This is an agency, again, that has not completed this proceeding in 4 years, that is actively looking to say, is 90 days too long, and that should be shortened to 30. And the county executive made this point with the chairman of the FCC, that by shortening those shot clocks, you are precluding the possibility of having public hearings because you cannot get enough notice, hold the hearing, and do the report within those periods of time. So part of what we're trying to do are to find the situations where we can find some bright line standards, say that these would be compatible, and to leave the other ones that may be more difficult for a different one. Let me go and move to the gentleman in the green shirt.
I just want to say one more thing, which is I realize we can't write this legislation here tonight, and it is complicated. I'm sure the county is working as hard as it can to protect citizens. But the zoning tool to address this is to look at having more situations, more areas of the county where it's a conditional use. And you might want to just do that in the neighborhoods, in the residential neighborhoods, make it a conditional use.
It already exists. It already exists as a conditional use. So I mean, it's not a matter that we need to make more. If you don't fit in the parameters that we lay out currently right now, which is attaching to a building, attaching to an existing structure, your remedy is to go and get a conditional use. So that exists now. The issue is, are there more things that we would move and place as limited use? The gentleman in the green shirt.